Hey folks, welcome back to the shop. I've got just a really quick thing I want to share with you. This is something that I have seen many times in my adult life, but never used. And I've only seen them used a couple of times as a youngster. This is what I'm talking about. This is, I would call it a blowtorch. I don't know if there's a proper name for it. If there is, somebody put it in the comments below. I can remember as a kid seeing workers using these, and I have seen probably video or film or on TV, I guess, somebody using one of these to solder a radiator, to use it to heat up a soldering iron to solder a radiator seam. I have seen these in antique shops forever. We collect antiques. My wife got me into it when we were very young, and you know, we do visit antique shops and flea markets and occasionally find interesting stuff. And I'm always going to the tool section when there is one. And I have bought some tools. Most of my planes were purchased from antique shops or flea markets. But I saw this a couple weeks ago and picked it up. I think it was, I don't have the tag, I think it was $20. And it's the best. It's of all the ones I've seen in flea markets, it looked like it was in the best shape of most that I've seen. And I also got a soldering iron with it. It was in the same area. I don't know if this was used with this or anything. It didn't come together, two different items. This was in a toolbox adjacent to where I found this torch. So it is a gasoline operated, I'm going to call it a blowtorch. I'm sure there's a different, it's a pressurized torch. Now, I'm familiar with Coleman lanterns. I have had and collected Coleman lanterns for 25 years. And I have, I don't know, 20 or 30 of them. I'll put a picture here of some of my Coleman lantern collection, and gas stove. Gasoline in here. The instructions say regular leaded or unleaded. I wouldn't use leaded. I mean, that probably dates this as before mid-70s when they got rid of leaded gas. But what I've put in here, I've got, I don't know, 8 or 10, 12 ounces of non-ethanol gasoline. It's what I run in all my small engines. So I did have to take the pump apart and free up the check valve that was in it. So I have done that. So it does pump. I can feel the check valve. It's got a spring on it, releasing as I get to the bottom of the stroke. So I've pumped it up, it's pressurized. And as with Coleman lanterns, especially the kerosene variety, you have to preheat the generator. And that's what this trough is for. So I'll put a little bit of gasoline in here. And we'll start it. So we'll let that has to burn for a little bit to heat up the generator, which is inside this housing. All right, while that's heating up, I'm going to clean the soldering iron. I see some solder on here. So I've put a little bit of flux on the So my plan is to try to tin this soldering iron. You can see the green flame from the copper. It's melting the solder, but it's not tinning. And it may be that it's not clean enough. All right, so I'm having trouble getting solder to properly tin this. So if any of you guys know how to do this properly, put some comments down below. I guess I could go on YouTube and look for a video, but I've been soldering since I was a kid, so the process of, well, that tinned that face pretty well. I'm fluxing it. I don't know if that helped. Oh, it does help. All right, so that worked. This is plumbing solder, so this is lead-free solder that you would use to sweat copper pipes. Let's light it up again. Well, anyway, that's a tool from a bygone era. So of course then you would use this as your heat source for running along a seam between two pieces of metal, for example, and in order to solder the seam. It was used for copper downspouts and gutters, or even steel gutters, soldering them. It used for, I suppose, I don't know that they ever used these for sweating copper pipes. They probably just used the torch itself. You wouldn't use the soldering iron, but I've seen them use it for soldering a seam on a radiator, automobile radiator. So certainly not for electrical applications, but still potentially useful for a situation where you need the heat, you need a lot of heat, and this has a pretty good heat mass, amount of heat load. So you could solder some pretty thick material with that, especially in a place where you didn't want a flame. So that would be useful. So very interesting. All right, let me I'll set this down there, and I'll give you a view of the instructions there. Use clean gasoline. For torch, use any leaded or unleaded gasoline. For fire pot or furnace, use unleaded gasoline only. Tighten filler plug and or pump with wrench. Wipe spilled gasoline from the tank and check for leaks before lighting. Do not operate in enclosed areas. This combustion device consumes oxygen from the air, the resulting lack of oxygen, and the products of combustion are each dangerous to human life. Here's a little close-up of the label that says protection, C&L, Clayton and Lambert Manufacturing Company, Buckner, Kentucky, USA. So it has a number on it, 1000, let's see, 1000-1. So there's a number here on the handle, 1000-1. Anybody has an idea of how old this is? You know, let me know, post it in the comments. All right, so very interesting artifact from what, 1960, 65, 70? I think they fell out of use with propane torches in the, I would think in the 60s probably. So if you know anything about these torches, or if you've ever used one and have any advice for, you know, all the folks watching the video, put them in the comments below. If I've done something wrong by chance, you know, feel free to give me some advice. There is a screw here. I don't know what it does. This looks like a packing gland. This is, I'm sure, a needle valve. There's a generator inside here, which takes a little bit of the liquid gasoline and vaporizes it very quickly, and as it expands, it, you know, comes out the nozzle. If you've ever used a soldering iron like this, it's actually made out of copper. The end is a block of copper. If there's a proper name for it, put that in the comments too. So interesting. I thought I would share that with you. Never had one, got one now. Don't know that I would ever use it again, but it's an interesting tool. For those of us that are fascinated by old tools, there's one to share. All right, so that's just going to wrap up this little blowtorch video. It's a cool thing. I can tell you that Since I was a kid and I first saw them, I've always been fascinated by them. Have seen them, like I said, in flea markets for decades and never, I mean, they were always in pretty crummy shape. So this one was in good shape, so that's why I picked it up. Thought I would play with it. It seems to work fine. So, interesting artifact from, what, 50 years ago? So, all right, that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.